Complaining is the verbal expression of frustration, a condemnation of reality often beyond human control. In an attempt to break down emotional barriers, complaining becomes a universal psychological escape. However, the impacts of complaining are actually the prelude to deeper and more complex scenarios, often overlooked. This should begin with reflection not only focused on verbal manifestations, but also on the roots and systematic flow of the practice of complaining itself. Complaints are not born in a vacuum but sprout from the interaction of individuals with an environment that crushes hopes and expectations diminished by reality. From a neurological perspective, complaining can activate brain regions associated with processing negative emotions, namely the amygdala. Extensive complaining can lead to the rewiring of neural pathways, thus reinforcing a predisposition to negativity. Ironically, such a negative loop creates a paradoxical reality where individuals who often complain tend to see the world through a gray filter. In socio-psychology, the domino effect of the habit of complaining serves as a prologue to the decline of group morale and productivity. A spoken complaint, like a virus, spreads through the social fabric and poisons the collective aura. This can foster a culture of toxic positivity, where grievances are seen as a manifesto of weakness, consequently marginalizing empathy and authentic introspection. In a broader social context, complaining without being followed by transformative action creates a generation of spectators who prefer to participate in the festival of complaints rather than being contributors to solutions. This diminishes critical and innovative potential, which should be the primary tools for social and individual evolution. Thus, the impact of complaining is an initial exploration of entrapment in the dark alley between dissatisfaction and inertia towards change. However, not all complaints should be labeled as counterproductive. When accompanied by reflection and directed towards introspection and stimulating constructive discussions, complaints can evolve into catalysts for adaptation and growth. Therefore, this is not just about illustrating consequences, but also about demanding accountability for actions and transformations that must accompany complaints. There must be a transition from complaining to transforming, from verbalizing negativity to positive solutions. Criticism should be a bridge, not a gap, because complaints without solutions will only become a bleak monologue interrupted by the silence of postponed change. Here are 7 negative impacts of complaining. 1. Mental erosion. Excessive complaining can cause mental erosion, a process where the ability to think positively and constructively gradually diminishes. This process is not only detrimental to the individual who complains, but can also spread to others around them. For example, an employee who often complains about their workload may start to view daily tasks as burdensome. This constant complaining not only wastes emotional energy that could be allocated to finding solutions, but also nurtures negative perceptions rooted in their minds. They may become trapped in a negative cycle centered on dissatisfaction, making it difficult to see the positive aspects of their work or opportunities for professional growth. In the long run, frequent complaining without seeking solutions can affect neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt to new experiences. Continuous negative thinking can weaken the neural networks that support positive attitudes and problem solving, while strengthening those associated with negativity and dissatisfaction. As a result, individuals may struggle to effectively respond to new challenges and lose the ability to feel satisfaction from achievements. At the social level, the complainer, who may previously have been seen as a source of support and collaboration, can become a focal point of frustration and lethargy for their peers. Continuous complaints create an oppressive work environment, eroding team morale and reducing motivation. As a result, not only individual productivity is affected, but also the collective productivity of the team or organization. A real-life example of this mental erosion can be seen in individuals trapped in a victimhood mindset, where they often see themselves as victims of circumstances, without acknowledging their power and ability to make changes. This is a cycle that is difficult to break because individuals have been programmed to see from this limited perspective. Overcoming the tendency to complain too often requires self-awareness, self-control, and usually deep attitude changes. One must recognize that excessive complaining is not only detrimental to oneself but also to others, and begin to seek constructive steps to make positive changes, both in attitude and action. 2. Toxic environment. Complaining can be a subtle corrosive that slowly dismantles the positive structure of any environment. Office cubicles, lecture halls, even family dinner tables are not immune to the negative atmosphere sown by endless complaints. Take the example of a corporate workplace. One pessimistic voice constantly expressing dissatisfaction can replicate the virus of disappointment to others. Like the spread of mold on damp walls, complaints lead to the spread of pessimism. This is not just an assumption. Social psychology studies confirm that negative emotions are contagious, potentially creating a toxic or poisonous work environment. In such an environment, work motivation evaporates, innovation enthusiasm dwindles, and what remains is a pervasive sense of apathy. Once dynamic and collaborative teams transform into arenas of argumentation and pessimism, the flow of fresh ideas stops, buried by various complaints that undermine the purity of the brainstorming process. Another impact is the loss of positive identity of a team or organization. Qualities such as perseverance, adaptability, and optimism, which were originally the backbone of achievements, are now replaced by defensive attitudes and counterproductive coping mechanisms. The toxic environment is no longer a habitat for growth, but a breeding ground for frustration and reluctance to progress. Leaders and management who fail to recognize and address this condition can become trapped in a cycle of negative feedback, where complaints reinforce dissatisfaction and apathy, which in turn drives more complaints. In the end, productivity is buried, team morale is destroyed, and employee turnover increases, a costly hidden cost for any entity. Early recognition of the spread of complaint virus and proactive creation of strategies to counteract it through positive communication and nurturing supportive work environments are the keys to not only surviving but thriving in the challenges of the 21st century. 3. Physiological stress. Complaining is often seen as a daily emotional outlet, but its deeper impact is often overlooked, one of which is physiological stress. When someone complains constantly, their body produces higher levels of cortisol, a hormone released in response to stress. Excess cortisol can damage the cardiovascular system, suppress the immune system, cause weight gain, and various other health issues. For example, consider an employee who frequently complains about their workload. Every day they start by complaining about the pile of tasks awaiting them. Unbeknownst to them, their heart beats faster, their breath becomes shorter, and their muscles tense up. All these are physical manifestations of the stress they experience. They might start experiencing frequent headaches or digestive issues, which in turn worsen their negative feelings, creating a difficult-to-break cycle. From a biological perspective, prolonged complaining can alter neural pathways. The brain, being plastic, begins to strengthen neural connections associated with negative attitudes and stress responses. In other words, complaining not only creates immediate stress but also nurtures a tendency for future stress through ongoing changes in brain tissue. More ironically, this cycle is often unnoticed by the complainer themselves. They might think they're just venting their frustrations or seeking solutions, when in reality, they're sinking deeper into the sea of destructive stress hormones that harm their health. So, while expression and critical thinking are vital parts of navigating work and interpersonal relationships, it's important to distinguish between sharing productive concerns and counterproductive complaining. Utilizing strategies like mindfulness, exercise, and positive activities can help individuals manage stress and prevent the negative impacts of chronic complaining. 4. Social alienation. Social alienation or social isolation is a condition where individuals feel disconnected or detached from their community or social environment. Excessive complaining can be a catalyst for this alienation. Individuals who frequently complain may be perceived by others as sources of negativity, which in turn can reduce others' desire to interact with them. Here's a further explanation of these impacts in a critical and informative style. Firstly, excessive complaining often signals that the individual lacks the willingness or capacity to address their challenges. In a social context, this may convey the opinion that the individual not only shirks responsibility for their own issues but also seeks sympathy without effort for positive change. As a result, their peers may begin to avoid interaction, causing the complainer to feel isolated and misunderstood, reinforcing the negative cycle of social alienation. For example, imagine an employee who frequently complains about their boss, workload, or co-workers in the workplace. Although initially, peers might show empathy, continued negativity can erode that sympathy. Consequently, colleagues might start to distance themselves to preserve their own mental balance. The complainer may find themselves increasingly left out during lunch or excluded from informal gatherings. Furthermore, if the individual is unaware of or unwilling to change the impact of this behavior, the cycle of complaining and alienation can strengthen. This can exacerbate feelings of loneliness and increase the individual's difficulty in participating in group dynamics or creating meaningful social relationships. Instead of addressing issues, complaining without constructive effort builds walls that block individuals from the support and opportunities offered by their surroundings. In criticizing this phenomenon, it's also important to acknowledge that expressing dissatisfaction is a normal aspect of human communication and has its place in building authentic relationships. However, a careful balance must be struck between sharing concerns constructively and falling into patterns of chronic complaining that hinder personal and professional social development. Self-awareness and a desire for personal growth are key to preventing the negative impacts of social alienation resulting from unchecked complaining. 5. Reinforcement of negative cycles. Complaining isn't just an expression of dissatisfaction, it's a catalyst that reinforces negative cycles with impacts far beyond the emotional realm of the complainer. When someone complains frequently, they immerse themselves in a negative perspective that not only spreads to others but also reinforces their own pessimistic view of life. This is a cycle of negative reinforcement. The more someone complains, the more negatively they see the world, and the more negatively they view the world, the more they find to complain about. Continuous exposure to complaints exacerbates the atmosphere, drawing people in that environment into a whirlpool of collective pessimism. Take the example of the workplace. Someone who frequently complains about job demands can create a negative aura that spreads among their co-workers. This not only damages individual morale but often decreases team motivation overall. Productivity decreases as energy that should be channeled into problem solving and innovation is drained to respond to and cope with the negative energy present. This cycle continues and often worsens existing situations. For instance, workplace complaints may provoke defensive responses from co-workers or superiors, leading to increased conflict and misunderstandings. A study by Stanford University found that negative attitudes in the workplace, including complaining, can impair memory and other cognitive functions. In other words, negative attitudes not only make situations worse but also make individuals less capable of coping with those situations due to decreased mental abilities. Ironically, in many cases, complaining attitudes actualize the very scenarios the complainers fear. It can be said that complaining is not just a reflection of dissatisfaction, but also a creator of failure through mediating negative attitudes and perceptions. In seeking resolution, breaking the chain of complaints is not simply a matter of changing the topic of conversation, but implies a mindset transformation, one that challenges negative inertia and advocates for strategic optimism as a driving force. This negative cycle can be broken by adopting a solution-focused approach, replacing complaining rhetoric with constructive and solution-oriented dialogue. 6. Neglecting opportunities. Excessively complaining is like sprinkling salt on fertile soil. It erodes potential fertility and hinders growth. This phenomenon manifests in various forms, allowing valuable opportunities to pass by unnoticed. The often overlooked impact of complaining is that it's not just a channel for dissatisfaction but also a veil that obscures exits and potential solutions. Take the situation in the workplace, for example. An employee who routinely complains about their responsibilities or superiors can quickly become a center of negative energy. Fellow co-workers might start to avoid dialogue rather than getting caught up in a whirlwind of complaints. In this scenario, the complainer misses out on crucial opportunities to collaborate in finding solutions or receiving constructive feedback that could help improve their work situation. Furthermore, constant complaints usually focus on problems, not solutions. This leaves little room for reflection or proactive action. For instance, an entrepreneur who constantly complains about market competition may fail to see opportunities for innovation or adjust their business strategy. Consequently, the business loses its ability to adapt and grow, which could have been used to gain a competitive edge. In personal contexts, the effect of complaining is also significant. When someone constantly focuses on the negatives in their personal relationships, they overlook opportunities to overcome obstacles constructively. They may fail to seize opportunities to strengthen bonds, learn from misunderstandings, and grow together with their partners. These stagnant relationships, constrained by the habit of complaining, fail to reach their full potential. Strategies to mitigate the negative effects of complaining involve turning it into constructive reflection. Every complaint should be accompanied by clear problem identification and followed by proactive strategy proposals to address it. This could mean creating action plans when facing difficulties at work, or objectively evaluating one's role in personal relationship discord. Ultimately, complaining without action is a rejection of personal power to influence change. Cultivating a habit of seeking constructive solutions rather than getting lost in complaints opens the door to personal and professional progress and growth. This attitude stimulates innovative thinking and positions individuals as agents of positive change. In line with Winston Churchill's words, "A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." 7. Damaging leadership. Excessive complaining as a habit can undermine someone's ability to lead effectively. A leader who frequently complains not only diminishes themselves in the eyes of their followers, but also sows seeds of pessimism and distrust within the group they lead. Firstly, a complaining leader creates a negative atmosphere. As a key figure, a leader's attitude can be contagious and influence the work environment for the entire team. When a leader continually voices disappointment without constructive action, they instill a reactive rather than proactive approach. This causes the team to become less innovative and reluctant to take risks or act due to fear of negative reactions. Secondly, complaints diminish a leader's credibility. A leader who often complains will struggle to see situations objectively and be fair when making decisions. Teams need leaders who are stable and dependable, not ones who easily falter under pressure. Excessive complaints may cause team members to question someone's leadership, potentially eroding authority and reducing effectiveness. Thirdly, constant complaining fosters a victim mentality. A leader adopting this role implies that they have no control over the situation or outcome, directly contradicting basic principles of leadership. A prime example is when a CEO continuously blames the economy, market, or competition for a company's poor performance without ever taking responsibility or offering substantive solutions. This creates a culture where excuses are deemed acceptable rather than solutions. A concrete example is the case of former Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer. Mayer was often criticized for blaming external factors for Yahoo's disappointing performance, such as slow innovation and failure to integrate acquisitions. This attitude raised questions about her ability to manage crises and make strategic decisions. Both the public and employees could detect this deflection, ultimately eroding their trust in her leadership. In summary, leaders who complain not only demonstrate their own limitations but also potentially undermine the morale and integrity of the team. A leader should be a source of solutions and inspiration, not a source of despair and dissatisfaction. To maintain positive influence and strength, leaders should learn to convey criticism and dissatisfaction instrumentally and proactively, rather than through a series of counterproductive complaints. 8. Emotional dependency. Complaining, often trivialized as a form of expression, actually harbors a deeper and more destructive dark side: emotional dependency. Emotional dependency stemming from the habit of complaining is a serious psychosocial dilemma that warrants serious attention. Fundamentally, complaining indicates an individual's tendency to seek external validation and excessive empathy from others as a form of emotional support. Each sigh of complaint uttered is nothing but a manifestation of someone's inability to integrate disappointment or frustration internally. The most vivid example of this dependency is seen in workplace dynamics. An employee who frequently complains about their workload to their colleagues tends to avoid self-reflection or effort to find independent solutions. Instead, they seek sympathy and support from others to justify their dissatisfaction. Constant complaints plunge the employee into a chronic pessimistic attitude that not only inhibits personal growth but also drowns the morale of co-workers trapped in the same whirlpool of negativity. The long-term impact of this behavior is saddening. Individuals become trapped in a vicious circle of emotional dependency that paradoxically isolates them from authentic support. They become emotional parasites, sucking positive energy from their surroundings, while nurturing emotional immaturity and eroded independence. This emotional dependency not only dwarfs an individual's potential, but also poisons the well of healthy interpersonal relationships. Because the satisfaction derived from peer sympathy and validation is ephemeral, it is born quickly and dies quickly. This encourages dependent individuals to continue complaining to get the next fix of momentary sympathy. Emotional dependency rooted in the habit of complaining is a monster that devours its own master. Only through introspection, self-awareness, and transformation of complaints into proactive actions can emotional independence be restored. We must provide guidance and awareness of the hidden dangers behind complaining behavior and promote constructive communication and effective problem solving to cut the chains of this dependency. 9. Loss of creativity and solutions. Chronic complaining, often unnoticed, is a slow-crawling poison that gradually damages the most crucial bend in the creative process. Instead of being an injection of solutions, complaining more often signals creative stagnation. This habit thickens an individual's ability to transcend conventional thinking, locking the door to innovative ideas. Creativity, like a craftsman in the process of creation, requires raw materials in the form of challenges and problems. Complaining in this context is not just an expression of disappointment, it is a distraction that intercepts mental energy, diverting it from the crucial task of finding solutions. In the murkiness of complaining, opportunities to carve out solutions are closed off by a narrow view. Let's put this example on the reality screen. An entrepreneur who complains every day about declining sales will waste time that should be used to dig into data, re-evaluate marketing strategies, and delve into new market needs. Such complaining indirectly freezes the situation, preventing substantial changes from taking place. Compare this with an entrepreneur facing similar downturns but choosing to map out the causes and turn their complaints into productive questions like, how can we fix this? The entrepreneur opens up space for creative growth. They don't sink into the mire of failure but choose to build stairs towards creative solutions that can lift them out of the slump. To reach the peak of creativity, individuals or teams must shift their paradigm from complaining to acting. It requires a nimble mindset to reframe failure as a stepping stone, not a barrier. Effective leaders will exemplify and cultivate a work ethic focused on problem solving rather than the problems themselves. The lesson to be learned from this critique is control over unproductive complaining. Every complaint should be balanced with proposed solutions, turning it into the beginning of constructive dialogue. When workspaces and social interactions are free from complaints that only affirm problems without effort towards solutions, creative potential can flourish without being constrained by that unproductive bad habit. Critiques and information should be converted into creative steps and initiatives. Complaining, often regarded as a form of freedom of speech, unconsciously sends negative signals to listeners. The motivation to interact with complainers drastically diminishes. Instead of fostering empathy, excessive complaints evoke disgust and distance. This means complaining not only cuts off the potential to receive support, but also hampers one's opportunity to build a strong and sustainable social network. In the professional world, complaining can become a cancer that eats away at an organization's soul. When a leader or team member continually mourns things without making an effort to change them, it breeds despair and apathy. The team becomes paralyzed, innovation stops, and initiatives drown in a sea of unproductive complaints. Furthermore, this impact can lead to missed business opportunities because partners and clients tend to seek a more constructive and solution-oriented work environment. Regarding mental and physical health, complaining can sow the seeds of stress and depression. Complaining not only reinforces negative perceptions of the current situation, but also invites a cycle of negativity that is increasingly difficult to break. This creates a deep chasm between reality and hope, often distancing individuals from real solutions and authentic happiness. What we often face at the end of life's journey is often a reflection of the narrative we build every day. Complaining, although initially relieving, gradually engineers that negative narrative. It not only distances us from happiness but also robs us of the ability to see and create beauty in life. No history is written based on a series of complaints, but actions, courage, and change. So let us replace grievances with solutions, replace words with actions, and replace the habit of rambling with leadership. This is what we truly want from the impact of complaining, a revival from despair towards a more productive and meaningful life. Until next time, hope this was beneficial. Thank you.